Okay, today's head trash is about prison, a prison of your own making. I've seen this time and time again as I coach young people, as I work with business owners, and in my own life, that so often we're simply stuck in a place because we don't know the way out or we won't plan the way out. And so we kind of accept our own very reasonable excuses about why we're stuck where we are. I'll give you a couple of examples. First was I worked with this young man who was a senior in high school, and he was off the chart smart, high SATs, 4.0 average, whiz with computers, and I was like, well, where do you want to go to school with all this talent? And he said, I don't know, maybe South Carolina. And I said, well, why don't you go to the best school? Nothing wrong with South Carolina, but why not the best school for computer science? And he said, well, I don't know. I said, what school would that be? He said, probably MIT. I said, okay, I agree, probably MIT. So why don't you go there? And he goes, well, and here come the reasonable excuses. Because it's a long way away. It's expensive. I'm not sure I could get in. And those are all, for me, those are just defensive positions where you don't have to think about how could I make this happen or what would that look like? How could I give myself this option if I want it? You've got to think through those things before you just accept these very reasonable objections. I pushed him a little bit to figure out how to go there. And I said, these days, nobody's getting turned away from universities. You might have to work there. You might have to get, some loans or scholarship money or something, but nobody's getting turned away who's smart, who wants to go to a school. So I think that one could be solved. Is it far away? Relatively speaking, I'd say no. Okay, far away would be, like Australia. That's far away. But just, up in Boston, that's not that far. It's a direct flight from Greenville and probably, 12-hour drive, I don't know. But not that far away, really. And then could he get in? Well, with his kind of grades, I don't know. I'm not an expert on who gets into what school, but with his great grades, I told him there's always a way in, all right? It might not be this fall, but if you go ahead and get up there, start working, start getting to know people up there in Cambridge, try to take some part-time classes. Maybe there's a feeder class you can take. You can qualify to get in. I just don't think he would be turned down. It might take him a year or so, before he's officially at MIT. But anyway, he ended up not doing it. And I don't, I'm sure he's doing well at South Carolina, but that was an example of someone who put up some barriers for themselves to not take, I would say, the more aggressive, the more interesting to me path. And I'll tell you two more stories. In my world, when I was a noob, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I did know by the time I was a senior in college that I wanted to be in the computer business. It would take I'd have to be not too smart to know, like in the early 80s when I got out of school, that, computers, Apple, IBM PC, all the personal computers were starting to proliferate and the software that goes with it as well, and I wanted to get in on that. And I was kind of messing around with computers and starting to talk to people about getting jobs kind of around here. And kind of a bold business guy, a mentor of mine, said, well, John, if you want to be in that business, don't you think you ought to go where the action is? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, the action's in Silicon Valley. That's where Apple is, and that's where, all these great companies are that you're talking about, that you read about, that are making it happen. So you ought to go out there. And I promise you, I said the same thing. I said, well, that's a long way away. I don't know anyone out there. I don't know a lot about computers, really. And he said, well, nobody knows a lot about computers right now, right? A couple people, but people aren't really majoring in it at this point in college. And it's not that far away. You get in your car, you'll be there in 3 days. And then, you'll meet people. It's a burgeoning industry, and if you show up, I bet you'll meet people and you'll start to network, and pretty soon you'll have yourself a job, and that'll lead to something else. And So I did it. I did what he said, and it was a little, it was kind of a nail biter there at first. Trying to find the first sales job. But once I got in the door and I was selling out there, it was easy to find the next job and to network and meet other people. And he was right. It was, the industry's growing so fast. It was kind of a cool place to be. So that turned out really well for me. And business-wise, my life would not be the same had I not gone for it and gone out there for my first job out of college. And I encourage, all the noobs out there to think the same way. Where's the best place for me to chase my dream? If I want to be in the bass fishing business or the bass boat business, where's the mecca of that? Is that Ocala, Florida, or I don't even know. But I mean, wherever the mecca is and the best players and the best small companies coming up, I would make that happen. So anyway, the third story I'll tell you is about our company DataStream, which we built from 1996 to 2006 when we sold it. We hired a consultant when we were at about $5 million a year in sales. So we'd worked really hard to go from 0 to $5 million a year in sales. And we hired this great consultant. I mean, couldn't say enough about this guy, Al Reese. R-I-E-S. He was a positioning and marketing consultant that worked with companies all around the world. He'd written, I think, 10 books at the time on marketing, and he was very expensive. But we were kind of stuck here in Greenville, South Carolina, $5 million business, thought we were hot stuff. Around here, we were hot stuff around here. And we were kind of just talking to each other and trying to figure out how this next year we get to $6 million or next year we get to $7 million, and kind of just, I'd say, local, kind of regional-based thinking. Most of our sales were in the Southeast. We had some, across the country, but most of us in the Southeast. And he looked at our business in a completely different way. We were stuck in our little local prison, okay? And he looked at it on a global basis because he consulted with Mitsubishi and Microsoft and Digital Equipment and pretty much nothing but big global companies. And he says, guys, he goes, you're in a nice market. You're still very small, but it's an enormous market, and you need to become international very quickly. And we're like, international? How are we going to do that? And he goes, I don't know. I'm not going to tell you how to do things. I'm going to tell you what to do. He goes, but what I would suggest you do is that you use your great revenue and your profits and you go public. You become a public company and you use your shares to buy your competitors in overseas markets. And that's how you become a global brand. And so sure enough, we did what he told us to do. We went public. We used our shares to buy companies in Argentina and Australia and France and England and Germany and Italy, China, really all around the globe. And we put it all together under one DataStream brand and became the global leader in our market. So Al completely got us out of our prison, the way we were thinking. And he got us to think about it completely differently because of his experience and exposure. So again, in terms of what I do working with other businesses, I try to do the same thing. I try to look at their business on a bigger, more strategic, kind of worldwide basis and think, what could this business be? And get them out of their prison. So again, whether it's a sales rep deciding what to do or a business owner trying to grow their business, I use this prison analogy a lot to try to get people to think bigger and to think out of their comfort zone. And even if they don't commit to doing something as crazy as driving across the country and cold calling Silicon Valley for sales jobs with no experience, you at least think it through. What would that look like? How could we make this happen? Not just that we're not going to do it because it's a crazy idea. So I encourage you, when you have these spots where you think you're trapped a little bit, without making a commitment to do it, just think about what it might look like, and maybe ask a few other people their opinions on it too, and maybe you're able to break through and break free every now and then.